You woke up before sunrise, already cold, no bed, a church doorstep if you were lucky. This was a real profession in medieval Europe. In 14th century London, 1 in 10 residents begged regularly. So what did a full day actually look like? First task every morning? Find your spot fast. Church entrances, market gates, bridge crossings were prime real estate. Arrive late, and someone else already owns your corner. A good pitch near a parish meant eating today. A bad spot near the tanneries meant hunger.
The church taught that giving alms earned salvation. Your poverty literally bought someone else a place in heaven. But not every beggar qualified for legal alms. Blind, crippled, elderly, you were legitimate. Able-bodied and begging was a crime called sturdy vagrancy. England's 1349 Statute of Labourers banned giving alms to healthy men. The Black Death had just killed half of England's workforce. Suddenly, every able body was needed in the fields. So by mid-morning, you were already performing, visibly, deliberately. Historian Bronislaw Geremek found beggars faked wounds with pig blood and rags. It wasn't desperation, it was professional strategy. Around midday, the church bells rang for the canonical hours. That signal meant wealthy parishioners were leaving Mass. This was peak earning time, maybe 20 minutes of real opportunity. A successful beggar in Paris earned around 2 deniers a day. A cheap loaf of bread cost 1 denier in 1300. So the math was brutal, but possible, barely.
After the midday rush, you moved. Or waited. Markets were the second great opportunity of any begging day. Vendors sometimes gave bruised fruit or stale bread before closing. You ate whatever appeared, whenever it appeared. There was no schedule around meals, only around opportunity. By early afternoon, the serious danger began. Medieval cities had no police, only parish constables and city watchmen. Vagrants found sleeping in the wrong place faced the stocks or a whipping. So you needed to know exactly where to sleep tonight. Hospitals run by monasteries offered shelter, but only briefly. St. Bartholomew's in London admitted up to 30 paupers nightly. Most nights, the line was longer than 30. If the hospital was full, you found a group. Beggars travelled and slept in loose bands for protection. Historian Michel Molat called them the wandering poor of medieval Europe. They shared information. Which town was generous, which was dangerous. They had their own slang, their own roots, their own hierarchy. At the top sat the Cripple King, the most skilled fake invalid. Below him, the blind guides, the sick carriers, the new arrivals. This was an economy inside the economy, invisible to the wealthy. But the church kept watching and counting. In 1350s Florence, the commune registered over 2,000 beggars officially. That was 17% of the city's entire surviving population. After the plague, poverty wasn't marginal. It was the majority condition. And in that world, your day had a rhythm nobody planned for you. Dawn. Find your spot before competitors. Mid-morning. Perform for the church crowd. Midday. Work the market before vendors pack up. Afternoon. Scout tonight's shelter before sunset. Evening. Negotiate your spot in the group. Nobody gave you this schedule. You built it yourself, daily. And inside this life, there were also small, deliberate pleasures. Taverns sold the cheapest ale for a fraction of a denier. Some beggars pooled coins to buy a shared cup on feast days. Medieval feast days numbered over 50 per year on the church calendar. On those days, wealthy guilds distributed bread and soup publicly. A feast day meant you ate without begging, just by being present. Historians call this liturgical welfare, poverty managed through ritual. It wasn't enough, but it was structured. People counted on it. At night, the group gathered and the conversation started. Not complaints, mostly stories. Who got lucky? Who got arrested? Which lord was visiting which city and scattering coins from his horse? Information was currency, sometimes more valuable than alms. By the 1400s, some beggars followed royal processions across entire regions. King Henry V's 1415 entry into London drew thousands of poor from surrounding counties. One guaranteed day of royal generosity was worth a week of street work. But this life also broke people fast. Average life expectancy for urban poor in medieval England was around 35 years. Winter was the real killer, not violence, not starvation alone. Hypothermia killed hundreds in London every January, according to parish death records. So the community you built mattered more than any single day's earnings. You survived because someone knew where the warm stable was tonight. Farmers sometimes allowed beggars into barns for body warmth in winter. A body generates heat. Even a beggar's body had value to someone. And then spring came, and the whole cycle restarted. New pilgrimage routes opened, new fairs, new opportunities. The great pilgrimage roads to Canterbury or Santiago de Compostela were gold. Pilgrims were spiritually primed to give. It was part of the journey. A well-placed beggar on the Camino could earn more in a week than in a month in London. So some beggars weren't local. They were seasonal migrants. Following harvests, fairs, pilgrimages, royal entries across hundreds of miles. This wasn't wandering, it was logistics. And here's what most people get wrong about medieval poverty. It wasn't invisible. It was central to how the whole society worked. The wealthy needed the poor to demonstrate their own Christian virtue. Poverty was a spiritual mirror held up to the rich. Without beggars, salvation through charity was impossible. That's why monasteries fed them. That's why guilds distributed bread. That's why the church registered them and protected certain categories. You weren't outside the system, you were load-bearing inside it. By evening, you were back where the day started, under a bridge or archway, counting what you earned, planning tomorrow's position, maybe 2 deniers, maybe 3 on a good feast day. Enough bread, maybe a shared cup of ale with the group. Tomorrow, the bells ring again, and you run for the church door first.
Same streets, same rivals, same prayer that today's crowd is generous. For most of medieval Europe, this was not a fall from grace. It was a recognized role, a daily discipline, and a survival system. One you had to be skilled, strategic, and frankly tough to survive. We remember the castles. We remember the knights and the merchants. But 1 in 10 people in every medieval city lived this exact day. Every single morning, waking up cold, already calculating.